There are some problems here. Sorry, big time.
I'm so upset. Oh my God.
What's up, everyone? Welcome to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. This is the first time I've ever done the show out of a hotel room. I don't recommend it, but it shows my loyalty to our wonderful audience, okay, that I'm here in New York. I was supposed to do another episode of Abby Phillips's show on CNN tonight, but I got canceled. Apparently, they want to do extensive coverage of the shooting that occurred, which I'm gonna also detail at the top of the show today. But I will be back in LA tomorrow. And so bear with me as I do the show from a completely different environment. We still have really great content for you, lots of great elements to share in all of these different stories that we have produced and ready to go for you all, starting with that shooting, which we'll do at the top. Later, we're also going to do a little bit of a follow-up on that double tap strike on the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis in Gaza. Lots of interesting efforts to make excuses, provide cover for what was obviously a war crime, which was, something that the US military got a lot of flack for, rightly so, when it came to our military activity in the Middle East. So we'll get into all of those details and more. Benjamin Netanyahu has continued his propaganda tour, and we're going to show you the latest and debunk some of the statements that he had to say about that. Apparently, he's had a come to Jesus moment in regard to the Armenian genocide. Should we believe him? Spoiler alert, no, we shouldn't, but we'll get to that later in the show. And then I gotta say, man, Charlamagne does deserve credit when he just rips into ineffective politicians, especially ineffective Democratic leadership. And so we're gonna get to that in the show as well. Second hour, Wosny Lombre joins us. We're going to show you some highlights from my CNN appearance last night. We're going to have some fun as well. So definitely stick around for the second hour and the bonus episode for our members. You could become a member by going to tyt.com/join, or you can just smash that join button if you're watching us live. Smash it. If you're having, you gotta tighten the belts a little bit. You don't want to spend too much money. That's totally fine. Obviously, you don't have to be a member of the show to enjoy all of the free content that we have for you. But if you want a free and easy way to support the work that we do here at TYT, just like and share the stream. It's, again, a free, easy way to help spread our message and promote the work that we do. All right, well, without further ado, why don't we start with the very first topic here, yet another tragic shooting, this time in a Catholic church.
So the question was, neighbors had said that the door to the church had been barricaded. The shooter approached on one side of the church building, and on that side, at least two doors, it appears there had been like a 2x4 placed.
Every one of us needs to be wrapping our arms around these families, giving them every ounce that we can muster. These were Minneapolis families. These were American families. And the amount of pain that they are suffering right now is extraordinary.
Okay, at least two children were killed this morning after a gunman decided to open fire inside the Annunciation Catholic Church, which is part of a Catholic school in Minneapolis. Bear with me as I try to get through this story because I'm personally overwhelmed by how many stories we have covered this year about children getting killed, obviously abroad, but hearing about it here in the United States is just as painful. So this gunman is also dead with a self-inflicted gunshot wound, bringing the total death toll to 3. 17 more individuals, though, were injured, 14 of them being children. 2 of those children were in critical condition in the hospital. Now, among the children who were killed was an 8-year-old and a 10-year-old. And the Annunciation Catholic Church has a school for children from pre-kindergarten to 8th grade. So this is the beginning of the school year for them. They were in church praying. It was their first day back at school. And according to the New York Times, a gunman fired a rifle through the windows of a Catholic church in Minneapolis where students were celebrating their first mass of the new school year. The attacker then shot and killed himself in the rear of the church, according to Minneapolis Police Chief Brian O'Hara. So before opening fire, this sick individual decided to barricade, essentially trap everyone in the church before he carried out his attack. So at least 2 doors of this church had been barricaded from the outside, the chief said. The gunman, who was in his early 20s, also fired a shotgun and a pistol. Now, reports do indicate that the shooter was armed with multiple weapons, including a rifle, shotgun, and a handgun. Mayor Jacob Frey of Minneapolis, of course, who's a pretty strong advocate of gun control laws, was beside himself and just absolutely rejected thoughts and prayers, which is typical after shootings like this take place. Take a look.
Don't just say this is about thoughts and prayers right now. These kids were literally praying. It was the first week of school. They were in a church. These are kids that should be learning with their friends. They should be playing on the playground. They should be able to go to school or church in peace without the fear or risk of violence, and their parents should have the same kind of assurance. These are the sort of basic assurances that every family should have every step of the day, regardless of where they are in our country.
So I have no faith in our lawmakers, whether it be on a state level or obviously not on a federal level. Congress is pretty much useless. And while I understand the calls for, better gun laws, I don't think that gun laws alone are leading to the prevalence of the gun violence that we have in this country. Yes, it's simple to point to the guns, but clearly there's also a very serious problem with young people and mental health in this country. This keeps happening over and over again. And oftentimes, when you hear these stories of young people accessing these weapons, the weapons might belong to their parents. Maybe that's how they access them. Their parents bought it legally, but they didn't secure the weapons and their kids were able to access them. I don't know. We still at this moment do not know how the shooter obtained the guns, whether or not this individual obtained them legally or illegally. We're gonna have to wait for the story to develop a little more. And as you guys know, in the past, I've certainly been vocal in being in favor of things like federal background checks when you purchase guns. But even if you pass those gun laws, right? Even if you do, clearly there is a huge problem in this country. When we talk about things like the male loneliness epidemic, people think about it as if it's like some sort of fun, sex war, gender war. No. There's something really serious happening in the country right now. Okay. High levels of depression among young women, loneliness among men. We need to figure out how we can take care of each other, how we can assist people with mental health, how we can provide better mental health care. This person, I'm gonna give you some details about the shooter as we know them at this moment. And again, I just want to warn you all, the shooting took place this morning. It's likely gonna develop further. We'll learn more about the shooter. This individual allegedly had a manifesto that police are currently investigating. But from the evidence that I've seen in the reporting so far, this person was crazy, like absolutely insane. Like writing all sorts of hateful, bigoted garbage on the magazines for his weapon, racist things about Latinos. It was, I'm not gonna repeat everything that he wrote on those magazines, but you could tell that this person was not doing well mentally, to say the least. Now, before I give you some more details about the shooter and what we know about him. The Minneapolis mayor, Jacob Frey, has kind of weighed in on something you may have seen online. I don't know why this has been a trend lately when it comes to shooters, but immediately you'll see a bunch of accounts online argue that it's a trans problem, that the shooter was trans. Okay, we don't have any evidence right now that the shooter's trans, and besides which, obviously you have a lot of shootings happening all across the country from different demographics, but a lot of the mass shootings are carried out by young white men, okay? I don't think that there's a big problem and we need to do something about young white men. There is a problem in the country with these shootings, and we need to get to the bottom of why they're so prevalent here in the United States and what we can do to mitigate it, to stop it. But this is what the mayor had to say. Anybody who is using this as an opportunity to villainize our trans community or any other community out there has lost their sense of common humanity. This is what he said during a press conference. Quote, kids died today. This needs to be about them. And I totally agree with him on that, 100%. So here's what we do know about the shooter so far. Okay, so the police did not release his name or say whether he had a connection to the church. However, the New York Post had an exclusive where they initially identified the shooter, and now it's also being reported by other publications. So there's a photo of the individual. Robin Westman is the individual's name. As I mentioned earlier, he is dead now from a self-inflicted gunshot wound. Now, he reportedly had a manifesto that the police are investigating. Now, Westman, who is in his early 20s, opened fire through the stained glass windows of Annunciation Catholic Church during a celebratory back-to-school mass filled with children around 8:30 a.m. Wednesday. A disturbing video believed to have been posted by the shooter shows "Kill Donald Trump" and "For the Children" scrawled on gun magazines. So that's just a few of the examples of what was posted or written on the magazines. Now, people who immediately want to jump to politicizing this or making it about political identity. He also had a lot of, what some would consider right-wing nonsense scrawled on the magazines. So let's just please think about the victims and put this person's alleged political ideology aside. Obviously, this person was not well, okay? So we'll wait for that story and his, background to develop further before we really weigh in on it. So one video showed diary entries with a drawing of the church and writing in both English and Russian. I'm not going to show you those images. They are available online, including in the New York Post article. Other videos show that the shooter had an obsession with mass shooters, including the Sandy Hook killer, Adam Lanza. So Minnesota Senator Amy Klobuchar said one of her former staff members has 3 kids who were in the church when that shooting happened. And she cited the account of one of the children, quote, "She watched a child get shot in the stomach and another in the neck. Kids were scrambling down in the pews to protect themselves." Here's more from Klobuchar. Take a look.
We're mourning for those kids that were in there that may have survived but will never be the same. And we are supporting our law enforcement and our hospitals. And there's right now some doctors and nurses that are sitting in an operating room with a little kid trying to save them from a shot in the stomach or a shot in the neck. And that's what we think of viscerally now. But to just let it go there and say thoughts and prayers is no longer enough.
And Minneapolis has been dealing with a lot of gun violence recently. I mean, the country has been dealing with a lot of gun violence, but this really stood out to me from the New York Times reporting. Minneapolis has seen a string of deadly violence in the past 24 hours. The shooting at Annunciation Catholic Church was the 4th in the city since Tuesday and the 2nd near a school. In total, the attacks have left at least 5 people dead and 25 injured, according to the police. When it comes to these types of shootings, I don't know what else I can possibly say. Obviously, it's tragic. I have a niece who's 8 years old. And so reading about that 8-year-old girl or 8-year-old child, I don't know if it was a girl, but 8-year-old child getting shot and killed is absolutely heartbreaking. Another 10-year-old getting shot and killed. We do have a problem with shootings in this country, and we got to stop doing this thing where every time a big shooting happens, people will talk about it, they'll debate what the solutions should be, and then nothing happens. And it's the most depressing reality about our country. Just the ineffectiveness of our political leadership, the pain and suffering of our people, whether they're suffering from severe mental health issues that go untreated, whether they're severely depressed, whether they've been dealing with violence, domestic violence that goes unchecked. There's just all sorts of things, all sorts of problems in our country. And typically what the people of any country would do is they would look to their leadership for solutions. But we haven't had any real attempt at solving this ongoing problem in the country. And that's what breaks my heart. What breaks my heart is thinking about all of those kids in that church, barricaded in there, okay, literally trapped in there by this disgusting gunman. Nowhere to hide, nowhere to go, nowhere to escape, just terrorized by someone opening fire against them like this. So hopefully the media will do its job. I know Ken Klippenstein will, because Ken Klippenstein doesn't do this cutesy little thing that journalists do these days in America where they hide the manifesto and refuse to report on it. I think we need to know what the motives were. I think we need as much information and transparency as humanly possible. People should not be living in terror like this. People should feel comfortable dropping their kids off at school or going to church without worrying about some crazy person, insane person, hateful person, whatever motivated this person to open fire and cause the type of pain, death, and destruction that this shooter did. Anyway, let's take a break. Let me just gather my thoughts. And when we come back, we'll move on to some other news. All right, it's our social break, so I know I'm crying. I'm gonna try to keep it together. It's just, I realizing how little our society cares about kids is really, really heartbreaking. And it's like hitting me so hard right now. So apologies if it's uncomfortable watching me like tear up like this. I'm trying to keep it together, but it's been a hard day. And like, the fact that people immediately jump to their, political talking points, like 2 little kids are dead. And then all the other kids that were in that church are right now terrorized, like totally terrified. Anyway, all right, I'm gonna read your comments. Navinik says, welcome back, Casper Cronkite. Yeah, right, thank you. Boomer Cat Dragon says, you look beautiful, Anna, thank you. This is my comfort sweater. And I was gonna change it to something more professional, but not today, not today. Kelly K says, watching Anna emasculate Scott Jennings with facts on CNN was cathartic AF. I can't stand his ass. I'm pretty sure he can't stand me today, but anyway, Michael Napin says, always happy to see Anna wherever she hosts, especially Anna Solo, thank you. Just a Mom says, I went to Annunciation from 1st to 8th grade. I'm gonna start crying again. I'm brokenhearted. Gun violence will touch every community in this country if we don't do anything. You're right. Yeah, and it's just gonna keep happening again and again. Our Congress is like the most useless body, political body imaginable. Susie Greenberg says, thank you for being human, Anna, and showing your emotions. Okay, let's go to our Twitch community where Carte Blonde Blanchy, who resubscribed for 51 months, says, sorry, Anna, I missed your Monday show. You are not a bitch. You are our salt queen. Remember, there are two things that are a bitch: life, and number two, my mother. Oof. I would not say that about my mom, but if your mom's got a better sense of humor, cool. YTP Renewed says, I'm always grateful for Anna's solo hour, if only so I can listen to TYT without headphones, without having to worry about my neighbors overhearing Jenk shouting. I will say, I was watching the show. It was on Friday, I think. I don't remember, but yes, it had to have been on Friday when Jenk had like this epic rant about Israel. And usually, especially when I'm doing the show with him and he goes on an epic rant next to me, since I'm working and I'm like so focused on getting more information to you guys, the rant, I can't like fully appreciate it for what it is. It was kind of nice to appreciate the rant. So that one got posted on its own on YouTube. You should check that out if you haven't already. All right, welcome back to the show, everybody. I just want to read one quick comment from Richard Prado in our member section. So the comment is, love that Abby Phillips keeps involving our beloved left media YouTubers. You did great last night, Anna. Thank you so much. Look, I have to say, I'm very impressed with Abby Phillip. I've said it on the show before, but it bears repeating. She's actually very brilliant. Like, she's a smart woman and knows her stuff. And I don't say that based on what you get to hear when she's on air. I love getting to know her during the breaks. Like, she's very talkative during the breaks, and you can tell that she's an intellectually curious person, digs deep, and is fair in her analysis. So I really like Abby Phillip. I know that maybe some on the right would disagree with that because the way the show is formatted, she tends to butt heads a lot with Scott Jennings. But honestly, she impresses me every time I meet her and hear what she has to say during the break. She's very impressive. Anyway, with that in mind, let's go ahead and move on to our next story.
I don't believe for a second that those journalists were not targeted. I think journalists are being targeted in Gaza. They're not allowing international journalists to report on the ground, to enter the Gaza Strip, unless, of course, they're being accompanied by IDF soldiers. And hundreds of journalists have been slaughtered in Gaza. Every single time it happens, Netanyahu comes out and says, oh, it was a mishap. And the United States just forgets about it and moves on, continues providing more bombs.
At first, Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu said that the double strike on the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis in Gaza, which killed at least 20 people, including 5 journalists, was just an unfortunate mishap. It was an accident. People make accidents like that all the time, right? Where at least 20 people were slaughtered. Well, now he's claiming that the IDF carried out the violent and deadly attack because they believe they saw a Hamas surveillance camera at first. And even though it was a mishap, they allegedly killed 6 Hamas combatants. Now, I don't buy any of that, and I'm going to explain why. Luckily, and this is a nice change of pace, it looks like the Associated Press is also questioning the narratives coming from the Israeli side of this situation. So, as the Associated Press reports, Reuters cameraman Hussam al-Masri was killed in the first blast, the first attack, while filming from the site, according to a fellow journalist and a doctor at the hospital. So the Hamas surveillance camera was just a camera belonging to a journalist. That was the first journalist that got killed in the first strike. But as I mentioned, it's a double tap. That's what made the video of what happened so unbearable, so disgusting. And we're going to show you that video again, so just prepare yourselves for that. But a Hamas official denied that they had a camera surveilling the IDF and told the Associated Press that if this claim about a Hamas camera was true, there are many means to neutralize this camera without targeting a healthcare facility with a tank shell. Now, whatever you might think of Hamas, that statement is undeniably true. So the idea that they're going to use use a tank shell in order to neutralize a camera, that's ridiculous. Like, at this point, even the establishment corporate media can't stomach the brazen lies because they lose credibility, whatever's left of it, if they just regurgitate and repeat the insane talking points coming out of the IDF and the Israeli government. By the way, a little backstory to all of this. Netanyahu first came out and said this was a mishap, unfortunate mishap. The IDF got upset that he said that publicly. And so now all of a sudden, oh, there were 6 Hamas combatants. Sure, there were. So hospital officials say that the second person who was not identified was also killed. A second person who was not identified was also killed in the first strike. So I wanted to mention that as well. But what about that double tap? Like, what is the excuse? Meaning, the second strike that was carried out by the IDF as rescue workers, family members of patients at the hospital, and other journalists arrived on the scene. And if you don't remember what I was talking about, this is what I was referring to.
مقصود لهذا الزميل الصحفي حسام المصري لا حصل الآن خليك يا الله راح الدفاع المدني قتلوا الناس راح الدفاع المدني قتلوا الناس استهداف كبير الآن.
The Associated Press reports that no one on that staircase was seen holding a weapon. You guys can all see it for yourselves. These are the first responders after the first strike happened. The military released its initial findings into the strike, offering no immediate explanation for striking twice and no evidence for an assertion that 6 of the dead were militants, including 2 who were identified by their employers as a healthcare worker at the hospital and an emergency services driver. The dead also included 5 journalists. How much more evidence do people need to finally understand, realize, and process the fact that these are intentional killings of innocent people? When you look at aerial images of the Gaza Strip and you see it leveled, every single residential building, every single school, every single university, every single hospital, every single refugee camp, when you see the videos like the one that I'm showing you right now, how are you gonna look at that and make the argument that they're just going after Hamas? They leveled Gaza, they destroyed it. 83% of the people killed are civilians, and that's according to internal IDF data, as reported by Israeli publications. 729. Read it for yourselves. The idea that we're all idiots and that like the Israelis are so much more sophisticated than us. We're just dumbasses that can easily be lied to, and we'll soak up their slop and believe their garbage lies is so insulting. It's the most insulting thing that I have to stomach every single time I do the show. And for the longest time, people reporting for the Associated Press just regurgitated the lies. One side saying this, the other side is saying that. You decide. No, how about you guys do your jobs and do accurate reporting? It looks like finally, for the first time in the Associated Press, we are getting that. They're like, oh, well, Israel is claiming that they killed 6 combatants, but wow, they didn't provide any evidence. Yeah, how is this any different from all of the other controversial bombings and shootings we've covered? But none of this, sorry, there's something in my eye. None of this is enough to convince Scott Jennings. Let's go to the video.
If you take this story at face value, bomb a camera kill 20 people as collateral and then say, as Netanyahu said in a statement today, that this was a tragic mishap.
Yeah, I think they said also 6 terrorists were killed in the attack. We've heard. How do you know?
I know it's BS because of the IDF's internal documents, which indicate that 83% of the people killed there happen to be civilians.
That there weren't any terrorists?
I'm not going to sit here and regurgitate the lies from the Israeli government as they're conducting a genocide.
Even if there were 6 terrorists killed in the strike, there were 20 people killed total. So there were a lot of people who were killed who, according to Israel, were not terrorists. 5 of those people were journalists. The second strike occurred when there were aid workers coming to assist people who had been caught up in the strike. That's what I'm talking about.
So look, Abby Phillips wants to be as fair as possible. I'm past the I'm going to be fair to the Israelis as they've been caught lying to us again and again and again. I'm not interested in that. Now, if they provide evidence, great. But since there is no evidence, there isn't a shred of evidence that there were 6 Hamas combatants killed in that double strike, I'm not going to regurgitate their BS lies. Okay? If people are uncomfortable with that, I'm sorry. I didn't know that I was just supposed to repeat one side's BS arguments when they haven't provided any evidence whatsoever. I'm not playing that game. One of the journalists killed was a contractor for the Associated Press, by the way. Maybe that's why they're finally doing their jobs and throwing cold water on evidence-free claims made by the IDF. The military did not elaborate on why it struck a second time or how it would have identified militants among the crowd on the staircase. Among the 6 people killed Monday that Israel claimed were militants were Jama al-Najjar, a healthcare worker at Nasser Hospital, and Ahmad al-Sar, a driver with Gaza's Civil Defense Agency. So the very people that they keep calling combatants tend to be, journalists, doctors, healthcare providers, important people that would help document the war crimes that Israel is committing. Important healthcare workers that would try to keep wounded Palestinians alive. The very people that this genocidal government would have all the interest in the world getting rid of, so they can carry on with their war crimes, with their ethnic cleansing, with their genocide. Without offering evidence, Israel has in the past, this is the Associated Press, identified emergency responders who work under the Hamas-run government as militants to be targeted, including in the killing of 15 medics in March when Israeli troops opened fire on ambulances in southern Gaza. That is the reality of the situation. Entire groups of humanitarian aid workers, medics, journalists, they've gotten so brazen that they try to kill like a few of them in one fell swoop. A little later in the show today, we're gonna show you more of my exchange with Scott Jennings on CNN. So you have that to look forward to. But I really do wonder how people like him sleep at night. Does he just regurgitate Israel's lies because he's afraid that he might get targeted the way that people like me are getting targeted right now? Is he worried about career opportunities being taken away from him? I don't know, but how do you live with yourself? Just, casually repeating the lies of a military or a government that has killed so many innocent people. 83% of the people killed in Gaza, civilians, innocent people. Unless, of course, you don't see Palestinians as people. And I suspect that there are, unfortunately, a lot of people in both Israel and the United States who think that way. And that causes so much pain in my heart. I don't know how anyone can be capable of dehumanizing anyone or any group of people to that extent. But unfortunately, those people exist. And I have to think about them and deal with them every single day. It's the most blackpilling thing in the world. What's also blackpilling is any mention of our Democratic leadership. So why don't we get to that?
I love having the speaker, minority speaker, Hakeem Jeffries. Because, I'm a political nerd. Like, I love talking politics.
Charlamagne hates him.
You do?
I don't hate him. I just don't think he stands for anything. Well, I think that I call him AIPAC Shakur.
Correct. All right, Charlamagne is correct. Now, look, I don't begrudge anyone who likes to have political discussions. I just find it hard to believe that you're really having an in-depth, stimulating talk with Hakeem Jeffries of all people. That's not to say that he's dumb. He just doesn't really come across as a charismatic person who has deep thoughts. But nonetheless, on yesterday's edition of The Breakfast Club, Charlamagne was joined by Claudia Jordan and Erica Cobb. And while Jordan said that she absolutely did enjoy having a chance to interview House Minority Speaker Hakeem Jeffries, Charlamagne obviously not so impressed. So here's more of the back and forth with Jordan. Take a look.
We did talk about messaging, and I actually went to the Capitol and had a meeting with him. And we talked about messaging and how I was like, the frustration with the party is y'all have to get more gangster. Like, stop going by the politics of the late 2000s, in 2010. And you have to like rise to the occasion in the messaging. And he did. I saw him do more afterwards.
Hakeem is a puppet. Hakeem's not doing anything if Chuck Schumer don't tell him to do it. And it's simple as that.
I think Chuck Schumer is probably important to Hakeem Jeffries. He probably does listen to what Schumer has to say. I mean, they've got to collaborate, right? They're considered Democratic leadership. I think what's more problematic, though, is what really speaks to our lawmakers. And so when you hear someone like Charlamagne call Jeffries AIPAC Shakur, here's what he's talking about. Let's take a look at AIPAC Tracker, doing great work, showing how much influence the Israel lobby has. Man, Hakeem Jeffries has collected quite a bit of money from AIPAC. So, man, nearly $2 million. So $1,742,105 from AIPAC. That's wild. That is a lot of money. Now, according to AIPAC Tracker, Jeffries has taken that money from the pro-Israel lobby. But Schumer, he's doing pretty well himself. Let's take a look, okay? Similar amount of money here. So Schumer has taken $1,727,974 from, pro-Israel lobbyists. So pretty identical there. Interesting. Now, both of them are from New York, and they are also both still refusing to endorse the Democratic primary winner for the mayoral race in New York City, which is incredible. Of course, I'm talking about Zohran Mamdani. And over the weekend, Dana Bash actually asked Hakeem Jeffries why he's holding out on his, endorsement. And here's how that went down.
What does he need to do to secure your endorsement?
Well, we had a very candid and constructive and community-centered conversation a few weeks ago before he went off to Africa. I've, of course, been on the road for the last several weeks, dealing in part with the Republican effort to try to rig the midterm elections through their gerrymandering scheme.
Just for context, it's pretty unusual for a high-ranking Democrat like yourself to withhold the endorsement of your party's nominee for candidate for New York City mayor. So what are you hoping to hear from him that you haven't yet?
I don't think we've withheld an endorsement. We are engaging in a conversation about the future of New York City, about the issues that need to be addressed, particularly the housing crisis.
Does it have anything to do with the fact that he hasn't denounced using the term or supporting the term globalize the Intifada?
Well, listen, I've raised several of the issues with him privately as well as publicly, spoken about some of the concerns that I've had.
The only thing that could maybe help me gain a modicum, not much, a modicum of respect for Hakeem Jeffries is if he just had his mask off moment and said, listen, one of my top donors doesn't like that Mamdani doesn't want to visit Israel as mayor of New York City. So I'm not going to endorse him because I follow orders from my donors. Just say it, just be honest. Instead of like playing this like cat and mouse game with the press over why you won't endorse the Democrat who won the primary for mayor of New York City. It is wild. And the guys, he never said globalize the intifada. He refused to condemn it because he doesn't want to play the games that members of the left are oftentimes forced to play in various interviews. I mean, just think about how many times people who have been critical of Israel's conduct have been forced, okay? Not you don't have to force, okay? I condemn what Hamas did on October 7th. It's not that difficult. But when you're like a year and a half into a freaking genocide that's being carried out by Israel, and the first question you have for me is, do you condemn Hamas? It's pretty frustrating. So you have to do all the throat clearing before you can finally address what's happening here and now. So for Zoran Mamdani, he's like, I'm not gonna play that game. And you know what? I respect it. I respect it. He didn't take the bait. He's not gonna be pushed around. Again, his policies aside, and I'm a little bit worried about some of his policies. I'm gonna keep it real, okay? But putting that aside, the more they attack him for these types of things, the more I like him. Because he's willing to go against the grain. He's not willing to be bullied by corporate Democrats, corrupt Democrats who are far more concerned. Hakeem Jeffries sitting there talking about, I'm worried about affordable housing. No, you're not. No, you're not. How long have you been in Congress, you bitch? You've been in Congress for so long. What have you done for affordable housing? Don't sit there and lie to us about how you want to do something about housing. The Democratic Party in Congress has been absolutely useless on the issues that they purport to care so much about. So do not deflect and tell me, I'm too busy with the housing issue. I'm gonna skip ahead because Dave Smith was on Joe Rogan's podcast recently. And it's really interesting to hear how some of the more open-minded people, libertarians, even some people who consider themselves right-wingers, how they've been kind of talking about Mamdani. Because typically you would think of right-wingers as individuals who like fear-monger about Mamdani being a Muslim. Ooh, this is gonna be the Islamification of New York City. And to be fair, there are plenty of disgusting Islamophobic right-wingers who say that. But in terms of those who have a bigger platform, they're not saying that. In fact, they're taking a good hard look at how Mamdani is being treated by the Democratic Party, and they've got some interesting things to say. So let's hear what Joe Rogan and Dave Smith had to say.
I also don't agree that this should be this massive coordinated campaign from both sides to make sure that he doesn't get into power.
Yeah.
Because you don't agree with him. Like, I think a lot of the stuff he's saying is ridiculous. Like using New York City funds to pay for transgender surgeries for people who can't afford them. Like,
I'm a nay on that.
Yeah, but if it just sounds nuts. It sounds like you're only going for that nutty vote. You want that nutty vote. But what is this? Are we allowed to disagree? So I disagree. I don't support that. I don't support a lot of the stuff he's saying. The raising of taxes, I think, is going to be really problematic, but I'm not an economist. But what is this game we're playing? Is it the people get to vote? Because the people voted, and they voted, and he won the primary. So it's supposed to be the Democrats get behind him, and then it's the Democrats versus the Republicans. Or are we doing something different?
No, the people get to vote, but if they vote wrong, then the powerful might have to come in and let the people know that they have erred.
And that's what Andrew Cuomo is trying to do. He is appealing to Trump to try to get Trump to get the Republican in the race to drop out, thus solidifying the independent vote and I guess the right-wing vote for Cuomo so he can maybe beat Mamdani. That's the kind of game that he's gonna try to play here, which screams, I don't really care about democracy. I don't like the results of the primary, so I'm gonna try to play games in order to give me an upper hand and potentially beat Mamdani. Look, again, take the policy out of it. I want to have a deeper discussion about whether or not we live in a country that values the democratic process. Because I heard a lot from Democrats about how important it is to protect our democracy. But when it's convenient for them, or when they're faced with a Democratic politician who's inconvenient for them, all of a sudden democracy goes out the window. The will of the people doesn't matter. And so I'm really happy that Rogan called the Democrats out on this. And honestly, Mamdani, just the mere fact that he is different from corporate Democrats in that he wants to pursue some of these more, socialist policies when it comes to certain areas of his agenda. That was enough to get the mainstream Democratic Party against him. But then you have the fact that he's a Muslim. And on top of that, he won't bow down to Israel. Oof, of course he's going to be a target. But nothing has been more of a white pill. I've been talking about the black pill a lot on this show, right? Nothing has been more of a white pill than to see how unstoppable Mamdani has been in the face of these ridiculous, unfair attacks. So, and you know what? If he looks poised to win, and if he wins, I hope he proves me wrong on some of the policies I'm worried about. Look, I'm worried about some of his more anti-police policies, right? Because I've seen how they've played out in LA. It's bankrupting us now because we pay so much for police overtime and we're short about 1,500 deputies. So you have to be smart in pursuing these policies. If you're concerned about police brutality, then you need to reform policing. But if you have an anti-police approach, I am worried about that. Okay, I just am. So I'm gonna wait and see. But here's one other thing that I will say. If you look at the, political landscape for this mayoral race, I mean, what other options do you have, really? The guy who killed a bunch of seniors by taking elderly people with COVID and forcing nursing homes to take them back in when they still had COVID? That guy, Andrew Cuomo? No, I don't think so. The Curtis Sliwa guy, he's a little bit of a kook. He's fun. I don't think I want him to be a mayor. You get what I'm saying? I don't think the people of New York City want him to be mayor. That's why he didn't win. But again, this idea that the Democratic Party is not reneging on all sorts of things that they have previously said about supporting the Democrat, making sure the Democrat wins, or unless the Democrat is inconvenient for their donors and for their, economic agenda, which is far more corporatist and less concerned with doing what's right for the people. Now, I want to move on to Jacob Lew, who became the US ambassador to Israel almost immediately after October 7th. This individual recently spoke to the New Yorker, and he admitted that under the Biden administration, children, wait, hold on, I'm in the wrong story, aren't I? Yes, okay, let's just ignore that entirely. Let me fast forward to graphic 10. So one of the things that Mamdani gets a lot of heat for is he's vocal about what's happening in Gaza. And I know what it's like to be vocal about what's happening in Gaza and be met with all sorts of hate and threats. But nonetheless, I'm going to give you an example of something he said recently. He says, leading global experts just confirmed what we've long known. Gaza is in famine. At least 500,000 Palestinians are facing starvation, acute malnutrition, and death. And it's likely to spread. The US government is not a bystander to this genocide. We can end it today. By the way, his views on Israel and Gaza, chef's kiss. It is nice to see a politician openly talk about these things, honestly talk about these things. Friend of the show, John Fugelsang, recently stunned a CNN panel by stating that Mamdani's policies are actually far more Christian than the right-wing Christians who are fuming at Mamdani for calling Israel out. So why don't we take a look at that?
Zohran Mamdani, who is running for mayor of New York, maybe you've heard of him, his policies are much closer, as a Muslim, his policies he's fighting for families, for mothers with children, for food, for transportation, for expanded housing, much closer to the actual teachings of Jesus Christ than the Christians who can't stop smearing Zohran Mamdani for being a Muslim socialist. His policies are closer to the gospel. Christ never talked about abortion, never condemned gay people, never condemned immigrants, would not shut up about poverty. It was like his Layla at all of Jesus' speeches. He's actually doing what Christ called for as a Muslim, and it's infuriating right-wing Christians.
Okay,
wow.
Go ahead.
I'm a little lighter than that.
Fugelsang is great when it comes to, sussing out the, fakers, the religious people who are really just fakers. And I love what he had to say there. Look, I'm excited about the fact that it does appear that the Democratic voters are hungry for something different. And that's what we need. I'm hard on the Democrats. And when I say that I'm hard on the Democrats, I specifically mean those in positions of power who have abandoned their voters, who have not done right by their constituents, who are corrupt, who are feckless. We need to stop providing cover for them merely because they're Democrats. You can't change these issues unless you admit that you have a problem. And right now, Democratic leadership is a problem. Seeing someone who identifies as a Democrat who won't back down, who actually is a fighter, is really nice for a change. And so we'll see what happens in the general, but he does appear poised to win, and we'll see how his policies play out. But the fact that we finally have a Democratic politician who is openly criticizing the genocidal government of Israel, and the more he does it, he doesn't really get hurt by it, is fantastic. And by the way, huge portion of people who voted for Mamdani happen to be Jewish New Yorkers. I love it. Absolutely love it. So, sorry, Jeffries. Sorry, Schumer. I can't wait for the day those guys are voted out of office so we can get real Democratic leadership to represent Democratic voters. Because right now, we don't have much. We really don't. All right, we got to take a break. When we come back, I want to do one more story for you. Patrick Bet-David had Benjamin Netanyahu on for an interview. I'm going to show a few portions of it and share my thoughts. Don't miss it. We'll be right back. What's up, everyone? Welcome to our social break. Electile dysfunction Vanguard says, from America's school shootings to Gaza's bombed churches, violence feeds on US hypocrisy. Biden and Trump keep arming Israel's war crimes, leaving children of faith in graves, not classrooms. We have to be vigilant on this. I totally agree. Anyway, I guess even at this stage of my life, I was still naive to some extent. But no, we live among monsters and they don't care about children at all. Titan says, Anna, this is why I love you and TYT. You don't just care. You're not just honest. You're not just real. You are right. Again and again, you strive for what's right and what's just. Thank you for all you and the team do. TYT too strong. Thank you so much. In Liberty and Guns We Trust, nice job on CNN, Anna. I saw clips on X. These pundits should be ashamed of themselves. Scott Jennings is a joke and everyone knows it. He's a puppet for the IDF. He's the exact reason people hate mainstream media. I gotta say something. Like Kevin O'Leary, I've now done that CNN panel with him 3 separate times. He's a personality, I'll just put it that way. But I never felt that he was like rude to me ever, right? Like we might disagree and clearly we have disagreed on camera, but like during the breaks and stuff, he's not rude. Scott Jennings is kind of rude, okay? He is just not a nice person. Anyway, Constantine Caveras says, eating figs of the tree in my backyard while listening to TYT's Sweet Fruit, Bitter News, and Anna Salt. My parents actually have a big fig tree in the front yard. It's been there since I was a kid. And it's giving fruit right now, actually, which is why you're eating figs. And the last time I visited my mom, I was forced to take a giant package of figs home, which I'm probably not gonna eat. Like, I don't want it, Mom. I'm not going to eat it. I'm traveling. Take it. So I might make a jam out of it. In Liberty and Guns We Trust, as a libertarian, I don't like Mamdani's policies at all, but I would never advocate attacking him because of his faith or race. Politics aside, he seems like a chill dude, just doesn't have good policies. It's interesting because I see that comment a lot, like people who don't agree with his policies, but they like him. Like they like him as a person. And Mamdani is very likable. And he's funny and he's got a nice smile. Obviously, what matters the most are the policies. And if you're libertarian, you're not gonna like socialist policies. I totally get that. But for me, it goes beyond policies, right? This story is more about whether or not the power players in our government really value democracy and will allow the will of the people to stand. All right, let's go to our members section. Cassandra writes in and says, Anna, you have a heart. Thank you for being a humanist. Thank you. S. Johnson says, when Columbine happened, I was in the 6th grade. I shouldn't be still hearing about this in my late 30s. I know, but you are, and you will continue to, probably into your old age, because our government is feckless and useless. Let's get back to the show. Welcome back to TYT. I'm your host, Anna Kasparian. We don't have much time left, and I don't want to be late for Waz, who's going to join us for the second hour. So let's get right to our next story.
They're calling you a wartime criminal, the offenses you've done, the amount of, again, like I said earlier, they're calling it a genocide. How do you answer to the critics that they don't follow politics, they don't follow the stories closely? But if they see 120 something countries that if you land there, they're supposed to arrest you, the average person is going to say, maybe this isn't a good guy.
Patrick Bet-David had Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu on his podcast. And, based on the comments the video got, PBD's facing a little bit of backlash. I'll let you read all that for yourselves, but you should watch the full interview. We'll include a link in the description box. And yes, I do work on a show under the umbrella of Patrick Bet-David's company. And so I do want to commend him because he lets me run my mouth as much as I want, especially on issues like Israel. And I'm going to do that right now. And so, you guys can weigh in on how you feel about how he conducted the interview. I'm more interested in debunking Netanyahu's just insane lies in the context of this interview. So why don't we do that, starting with this.
We've gone through the Holocaust, and I'm committed, as are my people, to prevent a second Holocaust that Iran was planning. And that's what we've been doing in this war. It's taken this long because we had to break this noose of death that Iran was going to put on us in their plans to conquer the Middle East, in their plans to then proceed to Europe, and in their plans to then proceed to America. They say death to America. We're just standing in their way. And boy, did we stand in their way. Israel is receiving and is very grateful for the American military assistance at about $3.8 billion a year. And 80% of it is spent in the United States. That's the deal. So it helps American industries. But we also produce these incredible weapons that we share with the United States. We produce intel that is invaluable for the United States.
There is a lot to debunk there, beginning with this notion that Iran wants to conquer the Middle East. I've noticed this trend with Netanyahu. Every time he makes an accusation, he throws an accusation against another country or a people's, right? Whether it's the people of Gaza, whether it's, Iran, he's usually accusing them of doing something that he wants to do. So just a quick reminder, he very recently told I-24 News, an Israeli publication, that he has like this religious connection to the Greater Israel Project. He wants to conquer the Middle East. That's what all this warring is really about. It's not about getting the hostages back, which is why they're annexing the West Bank as we speak, folks. Okay, there are no hostages in the West Bank. We all know that. They've been bombing Yemen. They've been bombing Lebanon. And these are recent bombings, by the way. Okay, so this has been going on because he wants Israel to dominate the Middle East, the Greater Israel Project. Look up the Clean Break memo, which was drafted by 3 neocons in the American government handed over to Benjamin Netanyahu. Clean break from the Oslo Accords, from establishing peace with the Palestinians, from allowing for the formation of a Palestinian state. And in that memo, I mean, it's basically a blueprint that has played out exactly as the blueprint intended. So saying that Iran wants to dominate the Middle East is rich when Netanyahu and the Likud party literally have the Greater Israel Project in their charter. Okay. The other thing I'm noticing about Netanyahu's, media tour is he really tries to frame things in a way that would make Americans think, oh my gosh, we really need Israel. Without Israel, we'd be goners. We'd be goners. Israel's really protecting us from Iran. Except we're the ones who provide all the bombs, all the weapons. And let's not forget, it was the United States. It was the American military. It was American bombs that were utilized to strike Iran's nuclear sites, which could have led to a full-blown hot war, but because of Iran's restraint, it didn't lead to a bigger hot war. But you know what? Netanyahu's not satisfied. Israel's not satisfied. They want the US to go into Iran again. That story is developing as we speak. I'll probably cover it tomorrow. Israel's protecting America? Are you kidding me right now? What a joke. And then one other thing I just have to note. The military aid that we give Israel, the country that had an economic surplus in 2021, in the middle of a global pandemic, while the US is drowning in debt, Israel's enjoying a sweet little economic surplus. But we're shelling out a ton of money in military aid to Israel anyway. And he talks about how it's so good for America because 80% of that money goes toward buying American weapons. First of all, if that were true, oh wow, thanks Netanyahu. Tax dollars are being redirected from working class people to a tiny group of weapons contractors and manufacturers. How does that benefit ordinary Americans who can't afford housing, don't have health care or universal health care, that's for sure, who just had their Medicaid benefits cut? How exactly does that benefit the American people? But besides which, what he says isn't even true. Israel gets a special little loophole that all the other countries we give military aid to don't get to enjoy. While other countries have to use that military aid to buy American weapons, Israel can actually use that money to buy or manufacture its own weapons. Which is why I keep bringing up the point that our foreign policy toward Israel is essentially helping Israel build its empire using our soldiers and our money. So I hope you had a nice day at work today. A portion of your earnings are going to go toward building Israel's empire. Now, he also mentioned intel. Israel is an important ally to the United States because they provide us intel. The kind of intel that informs our government that Iraq is a big threat to the United States because they are harboring weapons of mass destruction, which of course they didn't have. And that preemptive war in 2003 was a complete and utter disaster. Not a single IDF soldier lost their lives. None of them were on the ground in Iraq, but we certainly lost a lot of soldiers. And we certainly spent a lot of money looking for weapons of mass destruction that didn't even exist. But hey, you know what? Israel got the regime change war in Iraq that Bibi so desperately wanted. Okay. And then there's the intel that they don't share with the United States. Now, Scott Horton, who's incredible, very well read, and I've learned a lot from him, talks about an important piece of intel that wasn't shared with the United States in the lead up to a bombing in Beirut. This was in the 1980s. Okay, so this was the 1983 Beirut bombing, which killed 240 Americans, 241 Americans to be specific. They were all soldiers and 59 French troops as well. So here's Scott Horton talking about it on Piers Morgan's show.
In Victor Ostrovsky's book, By Way of Deception, he says that the Mossad knew that Hezbollah or I guess, proto-Hezbollah at that time was making a giant truck bomb and decided explicitly not to warn the Americans before the Beirut attack that killed 241 American Marines in 1983. I have to wonder if that's why Ronald Reagan went ahead and pulled out at that time instead of doubling down. It's because he knew of their treachery. That's, again, in the book, By Way of Deception. And it just goes to highlight the vast daylight and discrepancy between the interests of the nation state of Israel, which, as the gentleman said, of course, they're a very small nation state. It's in their interest, obviously, to get America to do what they want.
I'm a big fan of Scott Horton's, and I'm very excited that he will be joining us on TYT on September 5th. That's a Friday. He will be on a panel with myself and Dave Smith in the first hour, and we'll be talking about foreign policy. I'm obviously very excited about that. But what he mentions is the exact type of intel that would be helpful to the American people, to our soldiers, 241 of them who got killed in that bombing in Beirut. So when Netanyahu brings up how critical Israel is in sharing intel with the United States, it literally makes me feel sick to my stomach. And then get a load of this. He actually brought up the Beirut bombing while talking to PBD. Let's take a look.
Israel is different. It really is. We know that we have to fight for ourselves, and we do. But when we fight for ourselves, we fight for you too. Because we fight Iran. Iran tried to murder President Trump not once, but twice. Iran killed and wounded thousands of Americans with their IEDs, explosive devices, in Iraq and Afghanistan. Iran killed 241 Marines in Beirut. They bomb your embassies. They burn American flags. But if you look at who's actually fighting Iran, it's Israel. It's Israel, our brave soldiers.
No, this man makes me sick. He makes me sick, genuinely. USS Liberty, another Israeli attack, by the way, on one of our Navy ships in an effort to, frame Egypt and get the United States to invade Egypt. This stuff is sick. And so to hear him talk about how important Israel is to our safety here in the United States, not only is it a lie, it's an insult. Final thing that I need to bring up, because Israel does not officially recognize the Armenian genocide. And to Patrick's credit, he did bring this up. Now, Netanyahu is the type of person who will say anything to anyone at any moment when it's convenient for him. I want to give you that warning ahead of time. And then I'll give you the receipts for why I think he's full of it. But take a look at this.
For anybody that doesn't recognize Armenian Assyrian genocide, if there's any country that I would have expected to be on the list that recognized the Armenian and the Assyrian and the Greek genocide, it would be Israel. Why haven't you yet recognized the Armenian, Assyrian, and the Greek genocide that the Turkish did to that community?
In fact, I think we have, because I think the Knesset passed a resolution to that effect.
I don't know if it's come from you, though. I don't know if it's come from the Prime Minister of Israel.
Yeah, I just did.
Okay.
Here you go.
All right. Well, thank you for doing that. Thank you for doing that. I appreciate you. That's important to me. And I'm sure a lot of Armenians, Assyrians, and Greeks around the world appreciate you saying that.
I'm not one of those Armenians. I don't appreciate anything about Netanyahu. I think that he is a disgusting war criminal. I think he's a brazen liar. And simply saying, I just did, in regard to recognizing the Armenian genocide when he hadn't. He had mentioned the Knesset passing a resolution. Okay, that's not you personally making a statement about how you recognize the Armenian genocide, the barbarism, the slaughter of 1.5 million Armenians. Nothing in there about that. I just did. Like, get off it, get off it. And the reason why I don't believe anything that comes out of Netanyahu's mouth, especially as it pertains to Armenia and the Armenians, is because of what Israel's been up to in regard to arming Armenia's enemies. So this is reported by the Times of Israel. Few have benefited more from the two countries' close relations, that means Israel and Azerbaijan, than Israeli military contractors. Experts estimate Israel supplied Azerbaijan with nearly 70% of its arsenal between 2016 and 2020, giving Azerbaijan an edge against Armenia and boosting Israel's large defense industry. Let me just remind you all that Azerbaijan used those Israeli weapons to ethnically cleanse 150,000 Armenians from Nagorno-Karabakh, and also used those weapons to invade Armenia. They're currently occupying Armenian land as we speak. I mean, Netanyahu would know a thing or two about occupation. He specializes in it. He's absolute scum. Israeli arms have played a very significant role in allowing the Azerbaijani army to reach its objectives, said Peter Wiesman, senior researcher at the Stockholm International Peace Research Institute, which tracks arms sales. So Netanyahu can take his "I just did" and shove it up his ass. He is not an advocate of the Armenian people. He's not an advocate for humanity. He's absolute scum. That's what I think about him. He's a war criminal. And I pray that the day will come where I get to see him in shackles, imprisoned where he belongs. And until that day comes, I am not going to listen to any of his lies and regurgitate them. He's a bad guy and he deserves the worst. We got to take a break. We'll be right back.
What contributions to the progressive cause are you most proud of? I mean, I don't have super high aspirations for a singular role that I can play in the movement or anything. I try to present myself as what I think that I am, which is a progressive man who is driven by I think, well-interrogated and well-organized system of values that I try to stay consistent on, and I demonstrate that that's the sort of life that a person can lead and be successful and be happy and all of that. And that should not need to be done, but there are so many people on the right that are trying to push men in the opposite direction that I want to be able to do that. Along the way, if I can get people to care about some topics that they wouldn't necessarily care about, or that for some men they might think that's not a topic that they should be focused on, that's definitely something that I relish doing. And along the way, I mean, we've been able to introduce people to a lot of candidates. That's been a big part of what we've done. Not all of them necessarily got in office. Probably most of them did not. And a lot of them you might not even remember their names. But it was great to be able to provide people the platform where they had the chance of, making a difference. Obviously AOC and all that, but there's been a lot of great people along the way.
In the bonus episode for the members, we do some inside baseball. We're gonna look at John's desk. Nice little spaceship here. Nerd, but it is kind of look cool. Who has Legos? Oh no, he's taking apart a keyboard. Who has a mouse pad that's this big? He's got a dog with a nose that you can hang something on. You know what this desk screams to me? Nerd. And that's how we like him. We love Johnny Pie. He's got his own personality like everybody does at TYT. Come meet us all in the bonus episodes. TYT.com/team.
David Sorrell, Nina Turner. It's Adam Green drop by.
Charlamagne.
Congressman, great to have you. It's great to be with you, Chang.
Your show is a great thing. You're informing people. A lot of the shows that I live on, my CNN, my MSNBC, and even Fox, and any of the other shows, NPR, they are so quick to decide that they know what this building means today.
The one thing that I hate that politicians do, they talk about the people they should be talking to.
Do they have any idea that they're the establishment and that they're hated? Or do they not realize that at all?
People are so deeply in their little universe. I think it's very easy to not really question what you're doing.
Voters have a right to ask questions of any nominee, whether they're independent, Republican, or Democrat.
The system is duopoly that suppresses competition.
How is it the year 2024 and we're still like, maybe they'll talk about paid medical?
Like,
how are we?
how is that like at one level, it's like, good, what we're talking about now. You're like, it's 2024.
And that's always been the critique, your critique of us is, well, you guys give good speeches, you put out good tweets, but you're not wielding actual power. Now we're starting to.
My favorite news platform by far. It's not even close.
It's about a country and a principle, and that's what you and I both worked to achieve. And I'm so glad that at least half the battle has now been won.
If you want to go really hear what's going on, honestly, you should tune into the Young Turks.
Thanks for doing such a great job. Please keep it up. Hang tough.
Yeah.
That makes me so happy.
Oh, I like making you happy.
I didn't know about that.
This is a happy Anna Kasparian.
Awesome.
You're welcome, YouTube.
Join the Dragon Squad by becoming a YouTube channel member. Click the join button below or sign up on tyt.com/join to get access to fun emojis, a member-only chat, exclusive shop TYT designs, ad-free watching, and so many other amazing perks. Plus, you get bragging rights for being part of the coolest community on the internet and help us drive real positive change in the world. The Dragon Squad awaits, so join today.
I can't stand these young people. Get them out of here.
We got some beautiful new members, Abdullah Al-Markuz and Mohammed Susi, which you guys are just in time for Wazni Lambre, who's gonna host the second hour in the bonus episode with me. Waz, how are you doing?
I'm doing great, man. Honestly, just thinking about your media impresario, just like it's crazy. Like you're on CNN. I seen you on the Cinderella podcast.
Oh yeah.
I think I seen you a couple other places. I'm like, Anna is making the rounds. You are a juggernaut out here, skewering the woke identitarian left.
to the woke identitarian left's detriment. Yeah, Cinderella. I'm very impressed with Cinderella.
He's good.
I think the left would win. Okay, I'm gonna stop before I get myself into trouble with both my husband and the left.
He's done a lot of homework, like actual homework, and he's got a kind of humanist view on the other side of that.
Yeah,
and yeah,
he's great.
I'm a fan of his for sure.
Yeah, so I was interviewed by Cinderella on his Doom Scroll podcast. If you guys want to check it out, and by the way, I feel like my interview was okay. It was fine, but oh, please watch the one that was done with Vivek Chibber. That was my favorite one.
Yeah, they were pissed about that one.
Oh, so good. It was so good. Vivek Chibber is like my spirit animal. Like,
yeah, he's excellent.
His last interview with Ben Burgess, I think I've listened to it maybe 5 separate times just pumps me up. It makes me feel like I'm not crazy. So check that out. Anyway, all right, let's get to our next story before we take a break. And then later in this hour, we'll go over my latest CNN appearance because there were some fiery moments. And finally, for the first time, someone on CNN brought up the fact that an Israeli pedophile pretty much got away with it after getting caught in a sting operation. But that's a little later. For now, let's talk about what a whistleblower is telling us about the goings-on at the Social Security Administration. A whistleblower at the Social Security Administration is making some, truly terrifying allegations. Now, the whistleblower, Chuck Borges, the SSA's chief data officer, is now claiming that DOGE put more than 300 million Americans' identities at risk by using a server that happens to be vulnerable to hacking. If you haven't done a freeze on the credit bureaus, you should do it now. Okay, so this is a little bit of a tangent, but it's important for me to bring this up. If you guys can remember, there was this big Equifax breach a few years ago. And when there's a breach in your credit report, obviously it has all this important data about you, your social security numbers, all of that stuff. Your identity can be stolen. And so when you put a freeze on the credit bureaus, and you can do it with each individual one, and you can lift it at any time as well, it prevents hackers who have maybe purchased your personal data on the black market from using your data to steal your identity, take out loans under your identity and all of that. Okay, just want to give you that warning. Now, Borges alleges that the Department of Government Efficiency uploaded a copy of all social security numbers and personal information to an unsecured server in June that only DOGE could access, creating enormous vulnerabilities. I mean, theoretically only DOGE could access, but this server is vulnerable to hackers. He claims that a live copy of the entire country's social security information is now being held by a vulnerable cloud environment that lacks oversight from the agency or the ability to track who is accessing the data. Also, why do members of DOGE need to take our personal data and store it on a server that theoretically only they have access to? That's an important question, no? Important question we should be asking. Now, among those who did have access to all the information was Edward Korenstein. I'm sure you guys can recall who that is. That's the 19-year-old DOGE staffer, a software engineer who goes by Big Balls. And even though he's this big, impressive software engineer, apparently very careless with Americans' personal information and data, seeing as this data was stored on a vulnerable server. So here's why these accusations are such a big deal and need to be taken seriously.
This whistleblower complaint is just stunning. First off, because of who the whistleblower is. This is not coming from some low-level agency employee. This is coming from a decorated US Navy veteran who's currently the chief data officer at the Social Security Administration. The other thing that's stunning here is just the scope here. The whistleblower is warning that the records of more than 300 million Americans are at risk of being hacked or leaked. And this data includes everything from people's names and birthdays, their parents' names, social security numbers, citizenship status, and their addresses. Now, the whistleblower, Charles Borges, warns that should bad actors gain access to this cloud environment, Americans may be susceptible to widespread identity theft. They may lose vital healthcare and food benefits, and the government may be responsible for reissuing every American a new social security number at a great cost.
Guys, oftentimes people think of the government as an entity that protects the people, but in reality, you have to think of ways to protect yourself from the government at this point, okay? So please put a freeze on the 3 major credit bureaus because your data's out there. Obviously, the government doesn't care about protecting it. A spokesperson said that the data referenced in the complaint is stored in a longstanding environment used by SSA and walled off from the internet. High-level career SSA officials have administrative access to this system with oversight by SSA's information security team. We are not aware of any compromise to this environment and remain dedicated to protecting sensitive personal data. I just don't believe them. So be an advocate for yourself. We are in the age of having to protect yourself from the government. Waz, what do you think?
I don't see how there's any reason to believe that the people up at DOGE are acting with not even just our best interests at heart, but they're being diligent and careful about their work up there. There's no evidence to suggest that any of their processes have been that of these diligent, careful, unscrupulous workers. That's just not, there's been no evidence. All the evidence has been in the opposite direction, that these guys went in and fired a bunch of people and issued oh, you guys should quit and we got 3-month severance for you. And we don't know how this is gonna affect the rest of the agency. And we're gonna bring some of you guys back afterwards. All they've done is just take a big sledgehammer to stuff with no regard of sort of unintended consequences. And this is just a obvious, glaring one that anybody with a security background or who claims to care about the livelihoods of the American people would be able to understand. This is just obvious. Oh yeah, it's easier to do things on the cloud for us to access it. Although nobody's come out and explained to us why these folks need to access our stuff anyway. But yeah, come out and be oh, we're accessing for this, but explain to us why this is so much better for you and for us to be putting this thing on some unsecured cloud server.
Look, these are people from the tech world. And what is the most valuable asset for people working in tech? Data. Okay, this is just our government, the Trump administration, is looting us, okay? Whether it's our data, our resources, it is unbelievable how much they have gotten away with so far. And Borges says that DOGE told him that they pushed for this dangerous project, okay, to improve the way the agency exchanged data with other parts of the government. Okay, so which other parts of the government are they sharing this data with? Because so far, all we're hearing about is they're storing it in a server that other DOGE staffers have access to, meaning other people from the tech world have access to. Okay. Finally, Aram Mogadashi, who worked at 2 of Elon Musk's companies before becoming Social Security's chief information officer, wrote in a memo on July 15th, I have determined the business need is higher than the security risk associated with this implementation, and I accept all risks. Just saying the quiet parts out loud. Great, Aram. Thank you. I just think our government is a joke at this point. I mean, I don't blame anyone for not trusting our institutions because our institutions aren't really looking out for us. They're looking out for themselves. They're looting the government of data, of resources. It's just incredible to me how long this has been going on and how it keeps getting worse with every passing administration. This is the worst that I've seen, obviously. So let's take a break. When we come back, we'll have some fun with CNN, Scott Jennings, and people getting hit with facts about Israel, maybe for the first time ever. We'll be right back. What's up, everyone? Welcome back to our social break. John Diamond gifted 20 TYT gift memberships. Thank you so much. That's very exciting. And welcome to our new members. Screet says, and just think we've been enjoying and learning from Anna since she was a baby on here. I don't think you were learning much from me in the early years. Let's just keep it real. Okay, we were doing guess the camel toe segments. And I'm glad that I've grown. I'm glad that the company has grown, like matured, but thank you, Screet. You're very sweet. Entertained says, Anna was awesome on Doom Scroll podcast, loved the Michael Brooks stories. Oh my God, Waz, I'm so happy you're here. So one thing that some on the left got like, anyway, look, Michael Brooks was not into the woke stuff. He didn't complain about it
not
as
at all.
loudly.
He was like pretty gracious about it in public. But yeah, he like, I'm talking about like at the biggest fever pitch of the like woke, like racial reckoning, blah, blah. I'm talking about like when it was at its fever pitch, Mike was like, hey man, like this is not what we should be doing, man. And again, like on air, he would always try to be gracious because people were obviously like super hyper emotional about stuff. But yeah,
myself included. Yeah.
No, he was not into the woke identitarian shit at all.
Yeah. Diddy D says, Rokana says these companies should be paying us for collecting and selling our data. I totally agree. Our data is worth a lot, and they're just taking it. It's amazing. All right, let's go to our super chats. John Diamond, not only did you gift 20 memberships, you also wrote, just bought Jenk's new signed book, and let's get a bunch of new members, which you just helped with. Thank you so much. Constantine Kavaris says, tip for extra figs. I worked at a Haagen-Dazs through college. Mixing figs with vanilla ice cream is delicious. and should freeze just fine. Oh, I gotta try that. Look, I also really like fig jam because I love cheese plates, and you got to have fig jam with the cheese plates. If you can't afford the honeycomb, which I usually can't, honeycomb is like ridiculously expensive. Have you noticed that, Waz? You're a little bit bougie with what you eat. I've noticed.
What's honeycomb?
Like, have you ever had a cheese plate where they put a little chunk of honeycomb on it?
Oh yeah. I've never actually bought that for my crib. I usually just get the most expensive honey in the supermarket.
No, honeycomb's super pricey, which is why I don't buy it either. I'm just delighted when it happens to be on a cheese plate that's served to me. All right, let's go to Electile Dysfunction Vanguard, who says it's time for US citizens to put up billboards on every corner showing how both parties cozy up to the Israeli lobbyists or Israel lobbyists. So citizens stop pretending there's any real difference between Democrats and Republicans. Well, there certainly isn't on the issues that matter the most. Let's keep it real. All right, let's get back to the show. What's up, everyone? Welcome back. Anna Kasparian, Wosny Lombre with you. Woz is over at The Ringer. Make sure you check out his work over there. Follow him on all his socials. Woz is he's a stand-up guy. You really are.
Well,
Woz.
I try to be.
And then when you're not, it's fun. So you're just good all around. All right. Well, let's talk a little bit about CNN because I was on CNN last night and it was interesting.
Netanyahu said in a statement today that this was a tragic mishap.
Yeah, I think they said also 6 terrorists were killed in the attack. We've heard. How do you know?
I know it's BS because of the IDF's internal documents, which indicate that 83% of the people killed there
you know for a fact that there weren't any terrorists.
I'm not going to sit here and regurgitate the lies from the Israeli government as they're conducting a genocide.
I kind of got into it with Scott Jennings on Abby Phillips's CNN show last night, and I kind of wanted to revisit some of these moments, some of the highlights. Before we get to the first clip, Woz, any thoughts on that fiery moment?
Just the guy's smugness of how do you know? Again, they've released their own internal stats that claim that 8,800 of the deaths are confirmed Hamas fighters, when we know all they do to confirm that you're a militant is that you're over the age of 16. Okay?
And you're a male, yeah.
So we know that it's probably much lower. They've been just killing people indiscriminately. Like, let's be generous and say it's like a third lower. I'm willing to say that it's probably 2/3 if we're being honest, but let's just say it's a third lower than that. That means the civilian casualty rate is higher than 83%, Anna. That means it's like 88%, 89%, 90%. Like that's so when we know that's already their civilian casualty rate, and you come here and tell me that they done tripled it on this kill. Like that they've tripled their accuracy rate for killing Hamas that they've done the whole war? Nonsense.
Yeah, not only that, here's the thing. When it comes to something as significant as taking people's lives, killing them, I'm gonna need a little more than a notoriously deceptive military telling me, oh, they were militants. Oh, okay, I'm a supermodel and a billionaire. Like, you can't just make that statement and accept or think that we're all gonna accept it and regurgitate it like propagandists, like Scott Jennings do. Okay, like I need to see some evidence. And to the credit of the Associated Press, in a story that I covered earlier, they report, yeah, Israel's saying this, but they haven't provided a shred of evidence at all. And in fact, of the people who were killed in that double tap strike, here are the names. Here's what they did: like a hospital worker, medical driver, like just 5 journalists. It's just such BS. And look, Israel got away with it in the very beginning and in the middle and all the way up to like maybe last week, but not anymore. I mean, we never bought it, but the whole of the US media just kind of went along with the lies. So with that in mind, let's go to our first lengthy video, I guess. This is where I just kind of lay out everything that needs to be laid out in regard to what Israel's real intentions are.
I don't believe for a second that those journalists were not targeted. I think journalists are being targeted in Gaza. They're not allowing international journalists to report on the ground to enter the Gaza Strip, unless, of course, they're being accompanied by IDF soldiers. And hundreds of journalists have been slaughtered in Gaza. Every single time it happens, Netanyahu comes out and says, oh, it was a mishap. And the United States just forgets about it and moves on, continues providing more bombs. I do consider it a genocide when you have humanitarian aid workers being slaughtered, when you have every single hospital bombed, when you have the entire Gaza Strip leveled. That's not a war. A war, if you do targeted strikes and you go after the combatants. 729 magazine, an Israeli publication, obtained IDF documents showing, their data shows that 83% of the people slaughtered in Gaza are civilians, 83%. Let me say it again, 83%. How are you gonna call that a war against Hamas?
Let's just note for the record that as I was making my point about how Israel should be doing targeted strikes instead of leveling the entirety of the Gaza Strip, this is what Scott Jennings' face looked like. I mean, look, when I'm on these types of panels, even when I do Piers Morgan's show, I try really hard to not do this annoying thing that other panelists do. We're like I can't stand it. If I really want to make my feelings known, I just interrupt them and then I talk over them. Okay? It's the more honorable way of doing it. But everything I said is verifiable. Everything. Nothing he said is verifiable. But I've got more. I'll get to it in a second. What do you think?
Man, Ryan Grimm had, yeah, I'm here. Can you hear me? Ryan Grimm had some reporting this morning where, there were a bunch of foreign doctors at that hospital who were told that they had a mandatory training and had to leave the hospital and were told they couldn't go back that day. So essentially the Israeli military knew that all of the foreign doctors who were there to administer medical care to sick, dying, suffering Gazans were made to leave for some fake training program. They all said like this was a fake training program. They knew all the foreign doctors were gonna be gone, and then they struck the hospital. Straight up. It's like, what do you call that besides targeted? Like there's no other way to put this. And then of course it gets caught on camera and it's like, oh, my bad, which, with the Israelis, it happens that they're, anytime it's caught on camera, it's like, oh man, that was a big mistake. And every time it's not, it's like, oh, we got 100 Hamas guys with that strike. It's crazy the coincidence and how that's been working out.
Well, initially, after that video went viral, you had Netanyahu basically saying that it was a mishap. And then after that, the IDF got upset at him because it made the IDF look bad, like they made a mistake. And then all these the storyline about how 6 combatants were killed came out. It's so brazen, it's so obvious that it's a lie. Everything that comes out of the Israeli side is a lie unless they provide evidence, which typically they don't. I'm not gonna take what either side says at face value, but I'll take the evidence. And with the Israeli side, they just feel they're above it. They don't need to provide evidence. We should just believe everything they say, take it at face value. So, in the middle of this debate, the topic of the West Bank came up. And I think it's important to remember the West Bank, especially as, the Israel defenders pretend like they care about the hostages and that this is all about the hostages. Take a look.
Why is Israel annexing the West Bank, which of course is not governed by Hamas at all? Why are Israeli settlers allowed to just run Palestinians out of their legal homes, build thousands of illegal settlements? West Bank has nothing to do with Hamas. Why is Israel annexing it? Why did Netanyahu say that his stated goal in an interview with I-24 News, an Israeli publication, say that he has a religious need to pursue the greater Israel
I'm going to let Scott answer quickly, and then we've got to go. Go ahead.
Go ahead, Scott.
My view is this. The hostages have been there for almost 700 days. There's a reason that Hamas has not released them.
Are you going to answer her question, though?
I don't know. I don't work for the Israeli government.
It certainly sounds like you work for the Israeli government. Okay, there are no hostages in the West Bank, and he knows that. He knows that, Waz.
I mean, again, they can't really defend anything that they're doing. You know, I was talking to producer Taylor before I came on, and I was like, Zelensky can come up here and he can sell a narrative, right? Like he could be like, look, these guys invaded us. We need these weapons to defend ourselves. Like the Russian army was over there. Now they're over here. They're encroaching on our territory day by day, blah, blah. Like, this is what we need. And it's like, all right, they can just make the case for the war that they're trying to prosecute on its face. The Israelis and their defenders, they just can't. All they can say is, but Hamas. They can't be like, well, Hamas is about to, they're this close to breaching this security perimeter, or, this many citizens are in danger because this thing that Hamas has, or they just got a new weapon, or there's nothing. It has nothing to do with the defense of the Israeli people or Israel as a sovereign nation. Like, they don't make that case. It's just slaughter. Like, that's it. There's nothing else there. It's just slaughter and, ethnic cleansing by any other name. Like, it is what it is. Like, they're trying to drive this population out. They're talking about sending them to places like Sudan, which, by the way, is in a civil war, a crazy war zone. So they want to send them to another meat grinder. It's just obvious. Like, they push a bunch of people out of a town. There are no hostiles, no militants there, nobody there. They demolition, dynamite, detonate with explosives, controlled explosives of schools and colleges and universities and hospitals and mosques and like what do you call that? Like, that's not a war. You're not fighting against Hamas when you do that. Like, you're just basically trying to erase these people.
That's exactly right. And it's not just about the West Bank. It's not just about Gaza. I mean, they want to annex. I mean, look into the Greater Israel Project, okay? It goes beyond, obviously, Green Line Israel. It goes beyond Gaza and the West Bank. There is a reason why you see Israel at this very moment annexing parts of Syria, taking full advantage of the fall of Bashar al-Assad. Okay, I just don't accept that the Israeli government gives a damn about the hostages. In fact, the family members of the hostages say out loud on a regular basis that their government doesn't care about the hostages. And that's what disgusts me about all of this. I mean, to what end? How many people will Netanyahu and the IDF slaughter in their quest to dominate the Middle East? And why are the American people forced to pay for their empire building through blood and treasure? I really need to know that. I need them to answer that question. I'm not interested in building their empire. Okay, 2 more videos real quick. So the topic of the starvation came up, but Scott Jennings brought it up specifically in regard to the hostages. And I had a rebuttal. Let's take a look.
When you block humanitarian aid in the Gaza Strip for 3 months straight, it not only impacts the Palestinians, which I know you couldn't care less about, but it also obviously is going to impact the hostages. They're going to starve to death as well.
You're saying Israel is starving the hostages?
I'm saying, yes, yeah. When you block humanitarian aid for 3 months, where do you think they're going to get the food from?
Max, Israel.
What a joke.
Are you blaming Israel for something? Yeah, I am. He was shocked. I can't believe someone's blaming Israel for something. They've never done anything wrong, ever. Are you kidding me? Israel? No, they couldn't. Israel commits war crime after war crime after war crime. They blocked humanitarian aid into the Gaza Strip for 3 months straight. What do you think happens to everyone in that territory, including the hostages? Is he stupid or is he just pretending to be stupid? Okay, I'm never gonna get invited on CNN again if I keep going like this, but it's just, I can't hold back. I really can't.
It's the smugness for me, honestly. Just this, like the incredulity, like Israel is starving. Yes, they've said that, they said this stuff on TV, not like cranks or like, you know, some like political talking heads. Like people high up in their government are like, no, we're gonna starve them. We're gonna cut food off. We're gonna cut aid off. We're gonna starve these guys, malnutrition these guys to death. That's what, like they said this. These aren't idle threats. They've said this publicly and gone out and executed it.
Absolutely. In fact, just yesterday, there was a video of a Likud party member. I don't know what her name is. She had terrible makeup, like, and then like super, super long straight hair. That's all I know about her. And what she was advocating for, she was actually furious that Israel was being a little bit apologetic after doing that double strike on Nasser Hospital, killing 5 journalists and medical workers and first responders, right? And she was like, how dare you? We should be proud of this. We want revenge. This is revenge and we shouldn't be ashamed of it. And it's like, wow, okay. And you know what? It's amazing because they say it out loud all the time. And yet the American people are supposed to believe their intentions are different. No, I'm gonna believe people when they tell me who they are and what they intend to do. And they are in fact doing what they say they're gonna do. Okay, final video. I'm not gonna lie, the reaction to this or the lack of reaction to this made me very depressed all last night, pretty much all of today. So I finally brought up what I find to be a gross injustice, and it has to do with an alleged Israeli pedophile. Take a look.
The problem with Trump, though, is I think crime is the cover story. I think this is a power grab. And the reason why I say that is because look at the specific examples of crime that he allegedly wants to go after. I mean, just recently, his FBI did a sting operation in Las Vegas, and they managed to catch, through this sting operation, 8 separate pedophiles that were trying to have sex with minors, okay? One of those pedophiles is an Israeli government official who his government allowed to fly back to Israel after he had been charged in that sting operation for using technology to lure a minor for sex. And when it comes to the immigration issue, he loves to go after the undocumented immigrants, but not the employers employing the undocumented immigrants.
You mentioned that Trump, you described it as a cover story, but I think it's also worth noting that Trump has been talking about doing this.
So no comment on the fact that there was an Israeli government official trying to rape American children and we just let him go back to Israel? No. Okay, I just.
There's been a blackout on that one though. That's been a concerted. You won't find that in the Post. You won't find that in the Times. You won't find it on MSNBC. You won't find it on CNN. You will not find that anywhere of the major news outlets. Like the people that have covered it have been places like TYT and places like Drop Site and like the
Breaking
Points, all the like sort of independent media, like Pod Bros, like those kind of people have covered it. The major news outlets have completely been like, we're not touching that. It makes Israel look terrible. It makes our government look complicit in it. It's like, it's crazy.
Yeah, but because they are complicit in it. So let's just be clear. This is why I say we can't think of the government as an entity that protects the people. We have to think of ourselves as individuals who protect ourselves from the government, literally at this point. So the big message here, and F you, by the way, to all the corporate media that has provided cover for a disgusting pedophile. The big message to the American people by our government, by our corporate media, is that Israeli government officials are free to come here, do sex tourism and victimize minors, and And then they get to go home and never have to worry about facing prosecution for their disgusting, loathsome crimes. And yeah, it does make Israel look bad. Israel loves to harbor pedophiles. CBS, by the way, in 2020 actually did a big expose on that. Convicted American pedophiles flee to Israel. In some cases, just charged. They haven't even been prosecuted yet. In some cases, they don't even have to be Jewish. They'll convert. And then they find a safe haven in Israel. First of all, what kind of country do you want to be, Israel? Seriously, what kind of country do you want to be? All right, fine. You want to slaughter the Muslims. I find that disgusting. But let's put that aside for a second. Really, you want to be a magnet for pedophiles? That's our greatest ally? No, thank you. All right, we got to take a break. We'll be right back. There is a lengthy comment from one of our members, Winter Scoop. I was advised maybe it's too long to read in a social break, but I'm going to read it anyway because it seems interesting. I'm going to tell you a true story about my experiences with 9/11. I was in the Marine Corps at the time and worked as a small computer system specialist, a fancy name for an IT guy. In September 2001, I was on the USS Ponce LPD-15 landing platform dock. This ship was big enough to allow a Black Hawk to land on it, but not a Chinook. I will post a picture of the ship after this story. So there is a room on the ship called the LFOC, Landing Force Operations Center, another fancy word for computer and radio room. This was my office. I made sure that the satellite connections were always up and that the officers were always able to send an email or make a phone call to Washington. In September 2001, email wasn't fully ubiquitous and smart tech was a decade away. Me and my platoon had the awesome ability to be able to stay fully connected with our family and friends while the rest of the ship had to request time on a monitored computer for quick emails and such. Of the people that I stayed connected to was my high school friend and his mother. His mother is a polyglot who can fluently speak and read more than 10 languages. Wow. One of which is Israeli Hebrew. For fun, she would find news articles that I might find interesting in different languages and send them to me translated. I don't recall the exact news organization, but the news article I was reading in the LFOC in the early morning hours of September 10th, 2001 was a report that Al-Qaeda was rapidly ramping up operations, and their source in the IDF told them that they fully expect a large-scale attack on a major American site within the next couple of days. Sitting in that room with multiple people, I said, there's going to be another terrorist attack. Not thinking much about it, I went to bed at the end of my long shift and was woken up about 2:45 p.m. Spain time and escorted without explanation to the captain's cabin. In that room was all the top brass on my ship. My Marine commander asked me, son, I'm going to ask you once, how did you know there was going to be a terrorist attack? I said, very frightened, excuse me, sir, but what terrorist attack? They turned on the TV and I crap you not, I can't say that word, sorry. Less than a minute later, the second plane hit the towers. I quickly showed them my emails my friend's mom sent me, and they luckily believed me. IDF knew the attack was going to happen. Wow. I'm glad I read that comment. Thank you for sharing that with us. Doodle Dragon Imran says, love you, TYT. Great to be with you, Anna and Waz. More Michael Brooks stories, please. A real one remembered. Maybe in the bonus episode. Michael was amazing. Anyway, we got to get back to the show for now. We'll see you there. sure why Romulus sent in this super chat, but I always enjoy little factoids like this. And I think this rings true. 3 to 5% of the population tends to be criminal. 3 to 5% of the criminals commit half of the crime. 70% of criminals are under 30 based on studies. Just a random factoid. Thanks, Romulus. I appreciate it. And thank you for the super chat. All right, let's move on to a light story to wrap up the main show. And then in our bonus episode, we're going to cover a lot more, including the Free Press is big mad at some of our friends in independent media. That includes Ryan Grimm, Breaking Points, Glenn Greenwald. All sorts of people are getting attacked by the Free Press. And I think it's hilarious because their reporting on Gaza has been garbage. So anyway, tyt.com/join to become a member, and we'll see you there after this story. For now, let's talk about Cracker Barrel.
The only thing that could have been worse if they had made it Blacker Barrel.
No, my God.
Okay. That would have been bad. This they can recover from.
Okay. Oh, wow. I hadn't seen that until right this moment. Waz, care to chime in?
Only thing I'll say is that this show does lean into the wacky nature of this like morning zoo crew thing. And also my college roommate, Mike Reichard, shouts to him. He worked at the Cracker Barrel. He was a busboy at the Cracker Barrel while we were in college for at least a year. I don't know if it was 2, but those are my only memories. I still never set foot in the Cracker Barrel before.
My God. No.
I've been to Perkins though. Never been to Cracker Barrels.
Here's the big contribution my husband has made in my life, okay? I went from, I had never been to a Cracker Barrel even once because at the time when I met him, I don't think there were Cracker Barrels in California. They're starting to have some, like there's one in Victorville. Okay. But we would go visit his family in Florida and we would have breakfast at Cracker Barrel. And I was at first, not happy about it. I was like, oh, what is this place? Like this place does not look, there's too much stuff in here. It's too cluttered. It seems like it could be dirty. Oh, but it grew on me real quick. Those flapjacks, the best pancakes I have literally ever had. They're so good. They've got this like hash brown casserole that's like cheesy and delicious. Anyway, I think we have a story that we're supposed to do. I'll get to how much I love Cracker Barrel in a second. But last week, Cracker Barrel actually changed its logo, which ended up causing controversy, allegedly. So conservatives accused the brand of going woke, and even Donald Trump weighed in on the matter. In fact, just hours after Trump told the company to change the logo back, Cracker Barrel listened and did just that. So before we get any further, let's show you what the original Cracker Barrel logo is. That's the one at the top with the gentleman leaning on the barrel, the Cracker Barrel Avi. And then they wanted to go with the minimalist approach. So they took the guy away and instead had a super boring Cracker Barrel logo. I care approximately 0% about any of this. The only thing I care about are the flapjacks. Are they good? Are they the same? If they are, great. If they change that, then we're going to war. Okay. But yesterday, Trump posted Cracker Barrel should go back to the old logo. You're the president of the United States, man. What are you doing? Like, you don't need to weigh in on this. Admit a mistake based on customer response, the ultimate poll, and manage the company better than ever before. They got $1 billion worth of free publicity if they play their cards right. Very tricky to do, but a great opportunity. Have a major news conference. Okay, well, I'm done reading that. We don't need a major news conference about the Cracker Barrel logo. Hours later, the logo was reverted back to the original, and Trump posted this response: "Congratulations, Cracker Barrel," in commas for some reason, on changing your logo back to what it was. All of your fans very much appreciate it. Good luck into the future, make lots of money, and most importantly, make your customers happy again. By the way, the other thing about Cracker Barrel that's amazing, they're biscuits. Like, they've got really, really good biscuits. Have you eaten at a Cracker Barrel?
Still never been. I'm not gonna lie, this whole controversy has made me want to now try it. I'm pretty sure they got a few of them in Georgia. Next time I'm in, way out in the sticks, Georgia, where my brother and my sister live, I think I'm gonna try to visit. And the culture war is so crazy because I never knew that Cracker Barrel logo was like white coated, but I'm supposed to believe that. Well, I'm supposed to believe that the guy is like an actual cracker. Get it? Like that's what's supposed to be happening right there.
He's just an older gentleman who had, he had a long day at the farm. Okay,
but
tired,
he's a cracker.
But I mean, I guess he's yellow. I don't know if I don't know. I don't look. I get some people are more sensitive.
Weird,
it is weird. It's a distraction. Like, let's keep it real. This is a nonsense distraction. And if you're an American and you get riled up about logo changes,
yeah, our
we
politics
need to work
are
you a little
failing
harder.
you.
You're not busy enough. You're not busy enough. Okay.
Yeah, but you know why I will say that this is kind of a little bit of a story is that, Target, man, has been having problems since they went the other way. And this whole go woke, go broke idea, it's like they went so hard in that non-woke, anti-woke direction, it's hurt them and their business.
Interesting.
And the CEO has had to step down. Yeah, seriously.
Well, we should cover that on a later show. It's really interesting. For now, though, we got to go. Members only bonus is next. tyt.com/join, and we'll see you there.